I think I was reminded Prasad, if I'm not mistaken, to switch off the recording. So maybe, if one of you can take up that responsibility of just reminding me. I tend to forget. Yeah, thank you. All right. So I'll just start off with my presentation. I just need a heads up on this. You all are able to see this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so give you a lecture kind of a class. We also make it in. Yeah, and since I'm not going to be going back to my team screen, I need you to also, kind of voice out your opinions when asked for. Instead of chatting with me, I would prefer that you tell me whenever you have not understood something or a point needs to be clarified, or if I have a question to ask, then I would like you all to answer vocally, not through chat. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right, great. So we begin the class today with the concept of class and economic stratification. And I'm just going to show you uh, a few images, okay? And tell me if you have seen these images before or not, or it's something that you can recognize, or something that you heard about, you have some idea of it, okay? Just let me know. Yeah, so this is the first image. Have you seen this before?
Yeah,
You have seen this before? Okay.
I think this was when the US government gave money to the Wall Street to bail them out.
What? I didn't get that. Sorry. What was that?
I think this was when the US government gave money to the Wall Street to bail them out when the
Wall
economic
Street to bail them out. Okay.
and
All right. Have you heard about the Occupy movement? Have you all heard of that?
no.
No. Okay. Fine. I'll let you know in a while. Okay. The next image, do you know, or any guesses about this image? What do you think this is?
This one is the recent one, I guess.
Yes.
When all the migrants they walked hundreds of kilometers to their
Right.
respective
Right.
places, I guess.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You're right. Okay. And there's one more image.
Yeah, this
Which
is
is
the current Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
yes, very good. Okay. Now, in all these images, okay, there is an underlying theme. What do you think that theme must be? They're all different, events that have happened. Okay. This is a protest. This is more like, a forced eviction of sorts. Hmm? Uh, and this is another form of a protest. What do you think all this is actually reflecting? There is a theme that is coming out quite strongly. What do you think that is?
Um,
Yeah.
they all express extreme inequality of different
Okay.
forms. Like the first is economy. The first and second are the
Ah,
second is caste as well as economy, and the
right.
third is race.
Okay. Caste, class. Okay. Uh, in fact, yeah. So let me just come back to this first image. Okay. That is Occupy Wall Street. Uh, So the Occupy movement was an international, it was a progressive socio-political movement. And this movement basically expressed opposition to social and economic inequality. And they, in fact, questioned this whole principle or idea of what is a real democracy. And this was one of the first movements, this Occupy Wall Street, amongst the many other Occupy movements that happened across the globe. All right, there are, I believe there were about 950 cities from 80 odd countries that had very similar Occupy movements. Okay, and this happened in 2011. The first one that happened was in the US, of course, as you can see, and I think it took place in sometime in September 2011. Okay, it was also inspired by the Arab Spring movement that happened in the same year. Okay, uh, and similarly, there have been other movements like these. Like you, I don't know whether you would recall the anti-corruption movement that happened in India around that same time in 2011. You might have been in school that time, and probably you weren't aware of it. But in 2011, there were several such protests and movements that happened across the globe. Okay, what is interesting to also note is that there is a certain type of government that is functioning in each of these three images. Okay, now I showed you two images from the US, of course, and one from India. What is that form of governance in these two countries? What kind of a government do we have in India? Like we talk about, we boast about it rather. What is that government?
Democracy. Democratic.
Yes,
Democracy.
democracy. Absolutely. Now, each of these countries reflect a democratic form of government. And yet you find that there is this protest against this kind of mainly because this movement
Sarah, maybe you can stop sharing
is
because your voice is breaking a lot. So these hang up and slow up also a lot. Just
it
see,
okay? One
yeah,
moment.
just
No, I
stop
think if
sharing
I
and see if it is better.
one
I
moment.
don't know. एक बार try करके देखो.
Okay, tell me now if I'm clear.
हाँ, अभी let's just see.
I'll just speak a little more and then maybe you can decide.
हाँ, अभी I think because those just lower it a bit.
Okay, all right. Okay, so is this clear now for everybody, or do I need to do anything else? What I'll do is I'll probably turn off my camera. Maybe that also kind of
Yeah, because
yeah.
sometimes it just staggers up.
So yeah, coming back to our point. hmm, uh, we are talking about democracies, and we are saying that in democratic systems, in democratic countries, uh, which uphold equality, which uphold social equality, social justice, and all of that, we see these kind of protests, or we see some forms of injustice happening, or forms of inequality that are taking place. And why is that? Why is that the case? Isn't a democratic system actually supposed to enable, or bring about social justice and equality and equity to people? So why do you feel that democracies seem to be failing people? Do you have any responses to this?
Maybe because the internal system is corrupted.
Okay, the internal system is corrupt. All right.
The thing
Anything
is
else?
that
Yeah.
societies, even though they're democratic, they're all based on a very rigid hierarchy. And no matter how many equal rights you give everyone, those hierarchies still exist until we consciously dismantle them, which is what's happening these days, which is why it seems like democracy is.
Okay. All right. So while we have suggestions on how democracies must improvise, what we realize very strongly out here is that there is a failure in the system, okay, to meet these issues, these very ongoing impending issues faced by people. All right. And therefore, when we look at this whole social inequality, it's important, therefore, to look at it from the perspective of what certain thinkers also spoke about. All right. Coming back to the presentation. All right. You'll probably know who this person is.
Yes.
Okay, great. And what did he really talk about? Hmm? Any idea?
Communism, and
Communists.
income, mostly for the workers.
Okay. Okay. So, since our entire course is based on the conflict theory, hmm, we are going to look at the Marxian version of the conflict theory. Okay. And Karl Marx based his conflict theory on the idea that modern society, as we see it, has only two classes of people. Okay. One is the bourgeoisie, okay, and the next is the proletariat. Okay, the bourgeoisie are basically the capitalists. Hmm? They are the ones who control the means of production. They own factories, businesses, and all kinds of equipment that is needed to produce wealth. Right? And who are the proletariat, as you can clearly see from this image? Who are they? Who are the proletariat?
The
The
working
working
class.
class.
The working classes. Okay, but and what Marx, or how Marx looked at society, was that he saw the bourgeoisie or the capitalists basically exploit workers. Okay, so how did this exploitation happen? How do you think this exploitation may have happened? Do you see this form of exploitation anymore, or do you think that this exploitation doesn't exist at all? Hmm?
It still definitely exists.
Yes. And how?
Um, the the workers aren't actually the owners of the wealth in reality. The wealth is controlled by a very few number of people.
That the production of wealth itself. Okay. And what happens to the working classes? Okay, they exploited, whereby giving by when the wages are quite low in nature in comparison to what the capitalist makes by way of profit. We also see that this exploitation happens in terms of long working hours. Uh, you know, uh, the places where the working classes have lived are also not up to the mark in that sense. Okay, so all forms of exploitation have existed when it comes to uh, the working classes. Okay, and the way the capitalist has kind of exerted this exploitation is something that Karl Marx has spoken against through his idea, okay, of the conflict theory itself. Now, Marx actually foresaw a workers' revolution. All right. He felt that as the rich grow richer, and the workers would come together ultimately, and then they would rise up in some form of a global revolution. Okay, and this would finally help them in controlling this means of production. Now this was his vision. Okay, this is exactly, what the whole, the Communist Manifesto and all of it was all about. But did we see this happen? Did we see this form of a revolution actually take place? Did you read about this in history? Did you, did you read about something, about an event like this ever happening? Yes, no, yes or no?
There were strikes during the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, there were strikes, but did we actually see a kind of a revolution wherein the workers were able to finally control the means of production?
Yeah, the Russian Revolution took place.
Yeah, but if you read about the Russian Revolution, it was a different form of a revolution. It was a revolution against monarchy in a way. Okay, it was against the Tsar and his rule. Okay, so it was a very different. What happened in Russia, what happened in China. Okay, all of this was very different kind of a revolution, but not the one that Marx envisioned. Okay, what he foresaw was something where there would be a time where the working classes would actually be the rulers of the state in a way. Okay, they would not only be owning the means of production, but will be also be able to kind of control the state in a way. Okay, but we really didn't see this happen. Okay, but does that mean that whatever he spoke about,
Sarah, we can't
do
hear
we think that was
Sarah, I
hello?
think you should stop sharing this only because it is really breaking the voice.
Oh,
you.
okay. One
I think
second.
Yeah.
someone's mic is on. I think Shima, your mic is on, so the
I think that
sound
is
is
also
clashing.
possible. Why? Yeah. Shima, can you switch off your? Thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Yes. Yeah, we
So
can.
there's no breaking, no? Okay. All right. Yeah. So what is Marx relevant today then? Or has his whole idea of the class system and all of that become completely obsolete? Yes, no. Are you there, or am I speaking to myself now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? Is it still relevant?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Okay. And since you say it is, what do you really see around you then? Is it only a kind of class conflict that you see, or are there other kinds of conflict that we witness?
I had a question.
Yes, yes. Please ask me.
Like, looking at all these wage system and salary system, like,
Hmm.
why wasn't there a system developed where it's like profit based? So, whatever the profits of the owner are, like, some part of
Hmm.
that profit should go directly to the wages of the workers, right? Like, why isn't there that kind of a distribution system?
Because if you look at it, okay, since I mentioned earlier that it is the capitalist who actually owns the means of production, and it is for him to decide, okay, how much profit must be shared. Most capitalists do not believe or do not advocate in profit sharing techniques. Okay, they do not kind of even believe that profits must be shared equally. Okay, to some extent it will be shared in the term in the sense of giving wages and other benefits. Okay, but in terms of equal sharing of profits, that's really never done. All right, so if you look at let's say take the example of Ambani. Hmm? Uh, he is, one of the richest men in the world. Huh? And do you think that he really follows the system of profit sharing?
Can I just pitch in here a little?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, uh, my voice is clear, no? I fear my network is getting low. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like Sarah said, that what Marx had imagined that there would be like workers of the world will unite. That was a very famous slogan given by him, that all the workers will unite together and there will be a revolution and then we'll have a communist state. Okay. And but what happened in between? And that's why he said that even to attain a full form of capitalism is a necessary condition. Okay, so capitalism has to be attained to its peak for everyone to revolt against it. And the three basic factors which any capitalist needs is land, resource, and capital. Okay. Now, in land and labor, sorry, not resource, but land, labor, and capital. In this, what are the two factors which is movable? So among the three, which is movable asset and which is immovable asset? Can land move from one place to another?
No.
Can labor move?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can capital move?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, what is happening is there is unregulated movement of labor and unregulated movement of capital. Okay. So why is it that we worry so much that there's an economic crashing in US or the dollar rates have fallen? Because the capital no more today functions only in a very pure and simple form of capital moving as capital. Okay, capital today is also moving. The banking system itself functions like a betting. Okay, so you are betting on your hedge funds, you are betting on your mutual funds. It has almost become like a speculative movement of finance. Okay, so in this process, and there's a speculative movement of labor. In this process, labor has moved the. So where do you think your Levi or H&M is produced? Any answer, suggestions? Where do you think is
Vietnam, China.
and
in
huh?
countries where labor is cheap.
Yeah, where labor is not only cheap but where labor can be maintained in unregulated form. Okay, and how do you maintain that unregulated form is by having very poor labor laws. Okay, or having, so last year and even during this pandemic, if for that matter the government here, so earlier you said if you have 35 labors you need not have the labor laws in place. Okay, so everybody protested that this is very unfair. So what did this, they didn't say okay you need to implement the labor law. They increased, okay, let's not have 35, even if you have 45 labor you need not have labor laws in place. Or something like a very common category which is a very cheap informal labor is illegal migrants, okay, or immigrants in other countries, women, okay, people from lower caste, from minority groups, blacks. Why do you think like countries like US continuously keep shouting about Mexicans and Africans but still keep having them? Because it provides them with a very precarious category of labors. And what does it mean when we say a precarious category of labor? What do you imagine that would that mean? Any guess? It means it is a category जो कि एक साथ आके ये नहीं फाइट करेगा कि नहीं हमें एक यूनियन बनानी है और हमें ये करना है. Okay, so you see IT sector has no union at all. Only in last 2-3 years when there was such high practices of people just being fired up. You know, many of our Infosys or Reliance or Adani's fire people like you just call them up and you say don't come from tomorrow, and your iCard or your personal belonging is just left for you at the gate. Then what does it tell you about your entitlement as a labor? Does it make sense? Hello?
Yeah, we get you. We understand.
Okay, so basically we are talking about this continuous practice in this era where we are keeping labor as informal labor. Okay, and when we say informal labor, do not imagine only as factory labors as informal labor. Okay, even in like city like Mumbai, we always have this narrative alive about a Bangladeshi living in the city or a Bhaiyaji living in the city. This narrative of son of soil, that who is a true Mumbaikar, who's entitled for things here, is basically to divide that category of labor. Okay. So labor regulation in Mexico is zero, labor regulation in Vietnam is zero, in Bangladesh is zero, in India it is very poor. So, or even if you watch movies like Black Diamond, where they show this whole background narrative around how diamonds are produced through youngest of children, or even in India the carpet industry, all that keeps the category of labor divided, which means it is very easy to always keep the labor in a precarious condition. And then all of this situation leads to a variety of conflicts in which we are engaging with. Is that clear?
Yeah.
But does this mean that, that while we are mentioning, the developing countries, and we're taking examples of several developing countries where the labor laws are really, they really need to be improvised or looked up or reflected on. Does this mean that, countries like, the US, for instance, do you think that the labor laws are very effective over here? For instance, I showed you
Yeah.
the first slide. Okay, the first slide was on the Occupy Wall Street. Okay, and the whole Occupy movement, the slogan of the Occupy movement is that we are the 99%. Hmm? And what does that mean? We are the 99%. What do you think?
Because
Yeah,
1% holds all of the worth, all of the like wealth and resources,
yeah,
and the remaining
exactly. That
99% have to
you're
make do.
right. You're right. You're right. In fact, that's exactly what the whole Occupy movement, Occupy Wall Street movement was about. Okay, and even the Occupy movement, that we are the 99%. The 1% is who, the people, or rather, who are the people who are exploiting us. Okay, they are the ones who are actually, like what we saw, the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, the wealth producers. Okay, and they are the ones who are ensuring that this huge disparity exists, okay, between the rich and the poor. Okay, and they are the ones who also control most of the resources. Yeah, so irrespective, and that is why I gave the example of, or rather I started off with this whole, example of democratic countries. Because we see that, like, or rather it is very easy to pinpoint, undemocratic countries like China and others, where, where labor laws are practically, immaterial. And yet when we see that, there are other countries across the globe also being really no different, the countries that you would expect to, be in the forefront of protecting people's rights and equalities, are not the same, or not this, or rather not the same anymore, or have never really been. Okay, and therefore, even when Karl Marx predicted his, or rather envisioned his revolution, Okay, he thought it would take place in industrialized societies like Germany, for instance. Okay, he thought that it would begin in Germany, in England, and all these other places. He thought that the workers would come together, unite against the capitalists. All right, but that is not what we saw. We saw, in fact, we saw monarchical regimes being turned over. Okay, like for instance, or rather, agrarian, economies where the communist, or communism ideology had more impact and effect on. Okay, for instance, Russia and China. Okay, so this particular slide talks about how Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, okay, envisioned the history of society itself. Okay, in fact, they went on to say that the history of all hitherto existing society is a history of class struggles. Free man and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, guild master and journeyman, in a word, oppressor and oppressed, stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open fight, a fight that each time ended either in a revolutionary reconstitution of society at large or in the common ruin of the contending classes. Okay, so this is what both of them believed in. And this is
Yeah,
what, yeah,
and that is what provides us, and also a very important uh, argument which was given by Marx is about historical materialism, okay, or what he says the materialist conception of state. Okay, so a very good example of it. So what does historical materialism mean? Like he said, guild masters and journeymen, okay, or a ward or an oppressor or an oppressed or a free man or a slave. Definitely we don't live today in the time period of a slave, or we don't live in a time period of feudal system. Like in India, we like to believe that we do not live in a feudal hierarchical society anymore, but that is highly contested. But basically what he's trying to say is that we all are products of the time we live in. Okay, so we all are the products of what we think, what we argue, what we believe in the time we are living in. Okay, because the time we are living in is also an is also an output of the economy setup in which we are living. Okay, whether it is the feudal system, whether it is the colonialist past. When you see a Black Lives Matters, a lot of free thinkers or even a lot of funders, like we now question of funders like Ford Foundation, Rockefeller, uh, many others, who were basically colonists. They were taking money from colonial countries which they had occupied, and they were then funding this whole education system and scholarships and all that. And then, if you look at the history of Rockefeller, which is a huge scholarship and a very prestigious scholarship, that itself has become now very questionable. Okay, so it means that today, like for example, we live in a very commodified uh, life, where it means it is very easy for you to be entrapped in narratives of who is eating what, okay, who is wearing what, who believes in what kind of a sexual orientation, okay, or the imagination of a working woman who's very, she's working and yet she takes care of what oil to cook in. Okay, which means the the characterization of the feminism role of the role gender role has not changed, but she has been further burdened with this whole idea कि वो working भी हैं लेकिन वो खाने के तेल का और अपनी सास को और अपने husband को और अपने बेटों का भी ख्याल रखती हैं. Okay, so it is from there that we draw, and that's why we introduced this course, this whole conception right in the beginning of the course, is that the times we are living in is an output of the economics we are living in. Okay, so if you look at Polanyi, who's a very famous and a very important theorist, he said earlier human beings encircle the economic system. Okay, today the economic system has been encircled by the human being. So all your relations, all your transactions, all your associations now have this value added because of what you're able to provide, okay, or because of what you're able to give or take, okay, and all that is now being deeply defined by the economics of everything, so we have this continuous image of who is a good person, who is a nationalist, who is an anti-nationalist, who is a secularist, who is a true feminist. Any category we come up, and there's the 10 set of people who are ready to fight you down. Okay, so from this materialist conception of the state, we will draw continuously arguments in the other classes, where we'll talk about state, democracy, we'll talk about sense of justice, sense of equity, we'll talk about conflict, we'll talk even about how environment, how middle class believes ki environment kya hona chahiye, and how what does environment mean for somebody who is surviving in a subsistence rural economy or agricultural practices. Okay, or what does it do to feminism, the whole argument of feminism. Okay, so like I also mentioned earlier that today a huge number of informal labor actually comes from women. Okay, and these women are not only say black women or Mexican women or Latin women in America. Okay, these women can even be domestic violence affected women who have say run away from some place in Maharashtra, and they've come to Mumbai and they want to hide themselves, and they don't want to share their paper because the police might track it, and then she'll start working as cheap labor. Okay, somebody is ready to work in 100 rupees, she'll say I'll work as 10 rupees. Okay, so these are the structural flaws, overall structural flaws, because of the materialist. So यहाँ पे materialist means the economic system in the time period you are living in. Okay, so we like to believe that we are living in a global economic system. We like to believe that I can trade today sitting here, I can invest my money in US or Germany or France, but that's not true. Kingfisher went where, we have no idea. Kingfisher के employees का क्या हुआ किसी को नहीं पता, but we know for sure that Vijay Mallya is to be found in all the happening places in London. Okay, does that make sense? Like, ask questions, comments. What do you want to add? There's only like few set of people who are talking. Others are like, hello. I think it's only
Yeah,
me and Sarosh. Anybody wants to add to this narrative? Question, counter question. Does all of this make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Can you join the dots of the times you are living in? Okay, I'm going to call out people because this is like slightly irritating. Sarah, you there? No? No. Okay, Sarah is gone. So, is Parth there? Can you add something to this discussion? I'm going to call it.
No, I'm so sorry. I lost, I lost the connection in between. So
Yeah,
I.
so Sarah, basically, I'm calling out people's name to respond because just it looks
Oh,
like there are some 2-3 people who are. Can I hear something from Parth? Or we have a lot of Parths in the class. What is it? What is Vaishnavi? Is she there? I would definitely not like to sit in a class where everybody is just like, we don't even know if they're there or not.
is there a problem with the connection at your end?
I don't know, out of 60, only 2 people have no connection issues.
I don't know. There are some people who I can see. Well, they're there, and then it doesn't seem like they are there. So I'm not sure what is it. Because like, what is this calling besides the name of people? I don't know what
I
that is
think it
about.
means they're trying to rejoin because like
They
the connection,
rejoined, right? There are quite a
yeah,
number of people then.
because the connection keeps fluctuating. So like we get out of the call and rejoin again.
Ah, okay. There are quite a number of people I can see.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so should we tell them about the assignment now? And
Yeah.
hmm? uh, if you go to your the class folder under files, you will see that there are two assignments that have been uploaded. I mean, rather two readings, not assignments, but two readings that have been uploaded. Now, what we are planning to do is that we are going to divide the class into 8 groups. We believe that there are 80 students in this class. Are they 80 or
78.
78? Okay, fair enough. So we will organize the groups based on your roll numbers only. Hmm? So, for instance, 1 to 10 is one group, then 11 to 20 is another, and so on and so forth. Perhaps the last group will have only 8 people, but that's okay. Now, the first two groups, that is the 1 to 10 and the 11 to 20, what we want you to do is this. We want you to go through the readings. Okay, now and you can, each group can pick one reading. There are only two readings that we have put up that is based on class. Okay, the lecture that we did today. Okay, so you're going to both of you, that is both the groups are going to make a presentation as well as write a paper. I think it's a 1,500 word, no, Shima?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, a 1,500 word paper. Okay, you're going to write that as well. Uh, Prepare a presentation, maybe not, maybe a 10-minute presentation would be more than enough. Okay. And this presentation will be shown next class. The paper you can give it to us, okay, towards towards, let's say, the end of the semester, or I don't know. What do you say, Shima? I think they'll
So
need
I
time.
know the first draft should come uh, maybe by end of this month. So the
Okay.
idea is that we give you enough opportunity for you to keep writing and coming back to us. Okay. The idea is not to just like put together some random set of words which fulfills the agenda of 1,500 and make a submission, but you keep writing and you keep coming back. Okay. And just for the reading, initially it just might look that okay, this is too heavy, or it might look that it is too much, but then we also we are like you are a big group. Okay, so even if each of you read one page, that takes care of it. Okay, but keep reading it. Don't think that you'll read the paper on Wednesday evening and be able to present on it on Thursday. Okay, so you need to start reading. If you have any clarifications, if you're not able to understand, you will get back to us by tomorrow or day after. You will not tell us on Wednesday night that this paper is too difficult for us to present, or we were not able to understand, and things like that. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why we are giving sufficient time. Okay, and then we'll give you sufficient time to write and back and forth, because all this writing exercise then only helps you prepare as you graduate from one semester to other, that the increased load of writing, like by the end of it you're expected to write a dissertation, and so we imagine that you will not struggle too much at the end of it. Okay, the other thing is, when you, of course, there is a general instruction which has been put up for all of your references, but when you make a PPT, please don't just copy text and put it there. Is that okay? Is that clear? Okay. So you need to take key concepts, key arguments, and then initiate your discussion. So the idea is just not to present, but for you to be able to contextualize and lead a discussion in the class next week. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. So you read your paper, you contextualize it from wherever you are, from the experiences you have had, from the backgrounds you come from the cities you come from. You bring in those narratives. ऐसा बिल्कुल जरूरी नहीं है कि what is written in that paper, that those examples, those narratives you give. You can just take the basic argument of the paper and then completely contextualize in context to all of you 10. ठीक है?
Um, what exactly is the assignment? Is the paper a group project or individual?
It's a group project.
Okay, so all of us write one paper.
All
Yes.
of us
All of
submit
you will be
one
working
single
on
paper.
one. Yes, you'll
Huh.
be working on one paper, and yeah, you'll be presenting it together. And
So
if there are people,
we would want all 10 to speak up. It's just not like some 2-3 people speak up and rest vanish.
yeah, and
Yes.
when it comes to writing the paper, please make sure that all of you are contributing.
Hmm.
And then maybe one of you from the group can take the initiative of compiling all the information and making a
Properly
structuring
structured
it into an
paper.
essay,
Yeah.
and then also showing it to the other members of the group. Okay, and once everybody has approved, then send it to us. But everybody needs to work, and I don't think this is too much to expect from all of you.
Not at all. There are like 10 people in one group. 10 people in one group should be reading a book together.
And this does not mean that the others cannot read these papers, huh? The papers or these readings have been put up so that all of you can go through it, whether you are in that group or not.
Yeah, so you need the group which is presenting in next week has to lead discussions and other have to question. We will not be sitting and talking and continuously asking, can you hear? Can you hear? Are you there? We'll do this to you guys next week.
So is this clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all right,
Yes,
so
yes.
whatever has been discussed so far, do you have any questions, anything that you want to ask? Yes, Tanvi.
Anything you think we missed putting it as an argument? No additions to these arguments?
No.
All right.
ठीक है, फिर अब हम अगली बार से हम लोग कुछ भी बोल सकते हैं.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So then we meet you in the next class. But in case there are any doubts, okay, if you want to clarify something, please feel free
Get
to
back.
get in touch with
Yeah.
us. Huh? Please
And
feel free.
and and in the end moment, please don't come up with this thing that, oh, we found it very difficult or we couldn't understand. Whatever it should come in a day or a two. Okay, and will definitely help. The idea is not to just like throw some paper to you and say, oh, take care of it. We want you to engage with the paper completely. Okay.
And there are
Hello.
two. Yes, yes. Tell me. Tell me.
Uh, can there be any alternative for reading?
Alternative for reading.
For
Because
reading.
there is no alternative for dissertation writing in the final semester. There should be at least one course, no, where you have to read and write. Kabhi to pad lo.
There's no other alternative. You
Sorry,
have
I
to
lost
read.
you. Can you please repeat?
We are saying there is no alternative to reading and writing, because ultimately when you submit your dissertation, it's not an oral history, but it is a written document which you put in the library and you submit as a final submission, right? So the idea of all these courses is also to prepare all those skills along with the skill of arguments and knowledge system. Okay?
So the next class only two groups present.
Yeah.
Yes. And remember, there are only two readings. So choose amongst yourselves which is a reading that you would want to.
1 to
Uh,
10 and then 10 to
yeah.
20, no? 11 to
You
20.
you can't be presenting the same reading, huh? Both the groups cannot be presenting the same reading. So choose right now. Which one? Who's taking? Hello.
Can you read out the readings, like which ones are there? I can't find them.
You can't find them. Yeah, if you go to 1 minute, let me show it then to you. Okay, so go to files. Hello.
Yeah,
Okay, under that you will see class materials.
Yeah.
Click
yeah.
on that. You will see 2 PDFs. One is on does citizenship abate class, and the other one is about urban spaces, Disney, divinity,
Yeah,
and So
yeah,
Yes.
choose. You can see them right now, na?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
Yeah.
can.
And there's a writing guideline as well. Okay, so that you will be able to know or understand what exactly must be put in to the essay that you're writing. Hmm?
Got it.
Got it? Great.
And we would encourage that you write and submit and keep reviewing it so that it also helps you to make a good final submission.
So, any other question?
So one group has to present like the entire paper, then the next group the entire paper, and then the next class the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, two
Okay.
groups are presenting next class.
Okay.
Hmm?
Okay.
Any other question? None?
No.
Okay. So, we'll see you next week then.
Yep. Yeah.
All
Sarah,
right.
so the other
Yes.
groups will receive the readings later on, or we
Yes.
have to choose from the two readings
No,
itself?
no, no, no.
No, no,
Later on. Later on.
so there will be one taught class where we'll take, so next week we have a discussion, and the week after we are going to talk about Weber, and then uske baad wali class we will have another set of presentations, so we'll put it accordingly. Okay?
If you go through the schedule, no, which is also in that same folder, you'll be able to see how we have structured it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm stopping the recording.